Yeah, get yourself settled in your seat. If you've seen the previous two videos, then what you're getting this time is basically the same thing, but with a lighting change. We started off, didn't we, with myself as a small boy gathering the elements for forging the battle armour in the fires and flames of doom of my bedroom. I was collecting the anthems of steel from the choirs of damnation, from our price, and, like Saxon from the Bible, grew strength from my lengthening hair. That's how it started, and it will no doubt end, ultimately, with somebody being carried out on a stretcher. Yeah, I can't do the head banging anymore. I get a crick in my neck. Sore neck. I eat plants. Could I be? Probably not, but here's an empty promise. You won't need any knowledge of heavy metal to understand what's going on in this routine, but you will need comprehensive and extensive general knowledge generally. If you don't know how to be a general, then what are you even doing with your life? It's just shouting at enlisted people about how many stars you've got, and it's never any stars you've heard of, is it? I'm talking about concert venues this time to finish out this little triptych on my formative heavy metal years. It's April 1988 at Wembley Arena in London, and Def Leppard, stars you've heard of no doubt. I know they're hard rock and not heavy metal, but I need to establish the metric by which I judge all future music events. Me and my mates went to that gig. We travelled there by coach. 16 years old the coach was, and when we arrived, I remember this colossal concrete edifice with some flags atop it, floating in a sea of painted tarmac. Def Leppard at this time were one of the most successful bands in the world, hence Wembley Arena, and guess where our seats were? Yeah, seats. Like I said, this is the baseline against which all other gigs will be judged. The place is huge, rows and columns of seats from stage to horizon, floor to ceiling. The ceiling was above the clouds, it couldn't be seen. Only the perturbations of precipitations in the low cloud cover. The place seemed at capacity, and we were quite animated when the support act came on, Loverboy. I'd not heard of them or any of their songs, probably because they were called Loverboy. They might as well have just been called Cooties. They did a good set though, and the crowd seemed to like them. Then after that, Def Leppard came on, and I thought, oh look, there's the people who play music on that record my mate owns, that I frequently listen to at their house and not at my house. It's them on the stage. Or it could be. When they're half a centimetre high, it's kind of hard to tell, and the opera glasses I brought along don't help much either. Def Leppard belted out all the songs we knew from Hysteria and some other stuff not from that album. Now, this being the first gig I've ever been to, and with nothing to compare it to yet, I thought I'd had a great time, but on reflection I clearly had an awful time no matter how I felt about it in that moment. If you think you just had a good time, take it from me. You have no idea yet. You can't get ahead of yourself like that. Slow down. I don't have any Def Leppard jokes, as I don't find them funny at all, Def Leppard, or the jokes about them. They're just a straight-ahead hard rock band that are good at what they do. Being kept from the #1 Billboard Hot 100 chart position by a guy who did a horror music video with Vincent Price in it. That's some serious metal vibes from the king of Peter Pan land. That's the Def Leppard gig, the first concert I went to, the first venue I encountered. It was alright, but I think even at the time I had it in mind that stadium concerts weren't the thing for me. Chelmsford, I lived there at the time, is a big enough city that it has venues of its own. There's the Cramphorn Theatre for the upwardly mobile and chattering classes, and there was the Chancellor Hall, which, despite the posh sounding name, was for the likes of us. I don't mean to compare penis sizes, but the Clash didn't play the Cramphorn Theatre, did they? No, they didn't. I attended one gig at the Chancellor Hall, and it was for the thrash band Slammer. There was more of them, the band, than there was us, the audience. Did that dampen their heavy metal fire? Did they dial back the performance level? No, they did not. It was a most excellent, if sparse, gig. The vocalist spent more time moshing in the pit than strutting on stage. It was fantastic. I think there had been some fold-out chairs at the start, maybe, but they quickly got scooted out of the way. The venue was shit. It had all the charm of a state school hallway with doors leading off to rooms with walls made of boredom, under harsh lights that revealed nothing but the bureaucratic emptiness of shuffling papers and desperation. Or at least that's how the Nouveau Art Deco design it had on the facade at the time struck me. This is how it looks now. I have to be honest, dear viewer, I don't even know what that is. Some kind of bar, perhaps? I wonder what Thin Lizzy would make of it. Or Judas Priest, that's right. Or, I've got a lot to choose from. I don't even know if you've heard of Susie and the Banshees, or Primal Scream, or Cocteau Twins. The list of bands that didn't play the Cramphorn Theatre is quite extensive. You know what they did at the Cramphorn Theatre? A Midsummer Night's Dream. It's always that, no matter what else, all year long. They show movies, but not like in the proper cinema. These movies were weird. They were in foreign languages and had penises in. If I wanted to watch stuff like that, I could just tune into Channel 4 after The Watershed, where they'd show stuff like a reimagining of A Midsummer Night's Dream through interpretive penis dancing in the original German. It's okay to show hardcore sex on TV if you have a little warning triangle in the corner, but what the hell am I yapping about? After all, this was the era when an entire and legitimate British political party had their representatives dubbed with a voiceover if they appeared on TV or radio. It was all orchestrated by Actors Union Equity in an effort to give the declining impressionist industry a boost. Spitting Image's team of voice actors never had it so good. Another topic, another day perhaps, but back to the venues of my youth. London, the place where I was born. Only raised in Essex, I'm not really one of them and their horrible Essex ways, you know. Peaceful village life, largely uninterrupted by anything of note. The time Johnny got a new stick still has people chattering 50 years on. Not London. They don't care about sticks, or people from them. Cold, brutal, imposing buildings of state made of stone and rock, and the towering monuments to Mammon made of concrete and glass, the endless grinding of traffic, the gaudy corporate graffiti on billboard and fly posted on construction blinds, people sleeping in the street, litter everywhere, sirens seemingly never ending. Yeah, it was great, exciting. Of course, there was the London Underground railway system, but I've really got nothing to say about that. No interest in that at all. London was good because there were places to go other than the pub. There was Forbidden Planet, a comic store. Yeah, they sold comedians. And in the stairwell, as you go down to where they keep the comedians chained up, quite rightly, they had a full-sized replica of the lead Cenobite from the movie Hellraiser. Yes, I am a pedant. I wasn't a comic sort of person, but they had some cool stuff. Then there was the record store, Shades. It was some kind of mark if you were carrying around a grey Shades carrier bag, usually the mark of having purchased something from Shades. They would have record signings at Shades. You could go in with a copy of your favourite band's record and they would sign it for you, thus making a record deal. That's how that works, dear viewer. I've seen it with my own eyes. One time I was in there with my mate, and Lee Dorian, the vocalist of Napalm Death at the time, but not for long, was randomly there talking to one of the staff. My mate had to nudge me in the ribs. "Look, Pat, there's Lee Dorian, the vocalist of Napalm Death. I would say current vocalist of them, but we don't know the future, even back here in the past." He didn't say all that, of course. He just nudged me in the ribs and said, "Lee Dorian." It certainly was. And then I went right back to what I was doing. What? It's not like he was performing or anything. Even for something like this, dear viewer, where I'm just sitting here remembering things from my own past, I still do research. Mainly dates of gigs and things, looking up pictures of venues, local history. Not a great variety of filler sounds to insert between the things, and being the main ones, I think. Once again, the English language finds itself lacking. For example, I had no earthly idea that such big acts had graced humble little Chelmsford in the past before researching the venue. And while I was poking around what little information there is about the record shop Shades, I saw that one of the founders was a bloke called Kelv Hellraiser. That name sounded really familiar. Then I remembered. Oh yeah, he was one of the writers for Metal Forces who I never read and actively hated at the time. He mainly covered glam metal. Glam metal? Glam metal in general. Take your Gary Glitter claptrap and fuck off, please and thank you. Not Slade, or as I like to call them, the original Quiet Riot. Not them, or any other ones I like that I can't think of right now. But all the rest, sling your hook. Shades was an excellent repository for all things heavy metal and in many ways was part of the cultural pulse of the heavy metal scene. Shades in London. London itself has had a hand in culture a little bit. It was certainly something to think about as we walked past the peep shows, Triple X cinemas, adult sex shops and, if you can imagine such debauchery, offices of film production studios. Rank. No, that was one of the film studios, the Rank organisation. I only remember that office being there because of the big gong. Right, there wasn't a big gong outside of the office, no. What it is, when a Rank film starts, they have a person whacking a gong. You know, like how MGM films, they have somebody stepping on a lion's bollocks to open up their films. To get to Shades, you'd walk down a narrow alley crowded with X-shaped neon and frosted out windows, barkers ushering you into nudie booths. It's only £1. That's right, Shades, the record store catering largely to the teenage youth, was right smack dab in the middle of Soho's red light district. That's how you can tell it's a proper heavy metal concern. We went into one of those peep shows one time just to say we did, you know. You go into a small dark room, there's a slot for your pound coins, no return mechanism. And you pop in your pound and a little slit opens up and you look through there and there's a circular room quite dimly lit and this woman in lingerie kind of, not dancing exactly, but kind of swaying about. I had enough time to think, there's a lady who probably needs a cup of tea, and the slit snapped shut. It wasn't until years later that I learned what it is exactly the expected behaviour is in one of these booths. When I heard, I was like, you what? What? In public? I know it's a booth, but in public? Yeah, it is. Public. People do that. What if their mum found out? But yeah, there were lots of things to do in London when you weren't at a gig. Another concert venue we went to a couple of times was Hammersmith Odeon in Hammersmith, which is also London. For a square mile, it's a big place, is London. One time in 1989, me and my mate went to see Nuclear Assault there at Hammersmith Odeon. Candlemass and Dark Angel was supporting. I remember, outside before the gig, we were wandering around and hanging out around the place, and my mate nudges me in the ribs and says, "Look over there, Pat. It's Shane Embury, the bassist from Napalm Death, who will still be the bassist in Napalm Death when you recount this story 36 years later." He didn't really say all of that, he just nudged me in the ribs and indicated vaguely in Shane Embury's direction. Shockingly, I recognised him even though he didn't have a Cardiacs t-shirt on. Needless to say, we didn't approach him as he was sitting chilling with his own crowd and he looked pissed off anyway, probably thinking about Lee Dorian's lack of commitment to the vocalist position. Inside Hammersmith Odeon was a reasonably nice theatre about the size of 2 school gymnasiums. Had seats in it, so that wasn't great, but even if you were right at the back you'd have no trouble seeing who was who and what was what. No opera glasses required. I thought of this as a big venue. Wembley Arena, it turned out, upon reflection, was unfit for purpose due to the fact it was too large and thus the intimacy and nuance of the performance was lost. My actual memory notwithstanding. Hammersmith Odeon was big, with plenty of seating, but it wasn't arena-sized. Me and my mate ended up in the middle toward the back, I think. A good spot. Nuclear Assault, Candlemass, Dark Angel, with English thrash band DAM warming things up. DAM? Damn, I don't remember them from the gig at all, but they were definitely there according to the playbill. Memory is bullshit, innit? See, though this is basically just me recalling distant events from my life, I still do the research, I said already. For example, earlier I was talking about Chancellor Hall, But if I'd not done my due diligence, I would have happily been calling it the Civic Centre, which is a completely different place. I'd written a paragraph on a little something that happened with Dark Angel at Hammersmith Odeon, and I actually had a video of the gig playing as I wrote, which was fortuitous because during the course of it, something happened that gave me pause. My memory plays like this. Before they started the set, the lights were up and the guys were getting into place. For reasons, it came to pass that the crowd started chanting, "You fat bastard, you fat bastard," at the drummer Gene, who addressed this from behind his drum kit without the benefit of a microphone. It was all in good humour, I assure you, but I remember his voice just being as loud and as clear and booming, filling the entire space, and no microphone. I was fucking impressed. I could bellow at the top of my lungs and everybody would be saying, "What? Speak up, Pat." Then the lights go down and the gig starts. That's my memory. During the footage, two things suggest my memory is suspect. First, in the video, the lights are down and the gig is starting and Gene isn't sitting on the drum throne yet. And then later there is a brief pause between songs. The vocalist says something to the audience. There's a couple of rounds of "you fat bastard" from the crowd, and the vocalist then steps up to the drum dais and points his microphone at Gene, who tells us that we're all too fucking skinny or something. Good stuff, but I think you might be able to see why I don't trust the video footage at all, as it lends no credibility to my story. They should have recorded things according to how I'll remember them 30 odd years after the fact. So yeah, I deleted all of that. I mean, I ultimately got more material out of it by deleting it. This shall be my new approach to script writing. Write about something I'm shaky on, delete it in disgust, then discuss the reasoning for the deletion in depth. One last item from the Dark Angel set was when vocalist Ron Reinhardt asked the audience what they thought about the stage diving situation, with Ron being in the pro stage diving camp and the audience being in the pro stage diving camp, but there were seats, and Ron bemoaned this fact, which brings us back to the subject of the routine. Seating arrangements. Celtic Frost did a song called "I Won't Dance," and as I've gone through life, I think it's safe to say that while I certainly have no objections to dance, I've never considered myself as somebody who dances. I mean, things were completely different when they turned Fame into a TV series and put it on British TV. Leg warmers, I had those, but that's a completely different routine, I think, and I was aged in single digits. That's my defence. I was too young to understand my crimes against dance. I've gone through a large swath of my life believing this, that I didn't dance because I forgot what dancing really is. It's just the want to move in an expressive way outside the normal parameters, or, in actual dance terms, we want to fucking move around a bit. And young people especially, whether it's at the rave, or having a bop with the punk rock, or shaking your bits to the hits at the discotheque, or martial arts or sports, or being in a scrum of people hell-bent on causing each other bodily injury by slamming into them sideways, or attacking from above by launching themselves through the air, and, when not hell-bent on toying with others' mortality for funsies, is hell-bent on self-destruction by rapidly shaking one's brain within one's skull to a 200 beats per minute song played through a PA system that is loud enough to temporarily make you quite deaf. Oh, and add excessive alcohol consumption to all that, because nothing exceeds like excess. I'm not exaggerating all that much, but just in the course of writing this episode, I've come to the realisation, of course I danced. Not like the Bee Gees would have you do it, more like some kind of demented human forebear who'd swallowed magic fungus and decided the music of the Spheres was the most aggressive thing they'd ever heard. Leroy the Lungfish, throwing the devil horns. It was dancing in a fashion, and the last venue I'm going to talk about is the one where we hung out the most. A place where the dance was on, and that was the Marquee on Wardour Street, Soho. Not all of Soho is a red light district, dear viewer. I don't know why you'd have that impression. The Marquee wouldn't have looked out of place on an Amsterdam stroll, but it wasn't, no. But located where it was a stone's throw away from the hive of scum and villainy that is the West End. You could see it from the foyer. The outside of the marquee was painted black, probably appropriate as it was where the Rolling Stones played their first gig in 1962. Fuck the Rolling Stones. There was a box office under the awning, but otherwise there wasn't much to look at. If you were waiting in line at a gig, sitting on the pavement, the eye would inexorably be drawn to the neon and billboards attached to the theatres advertising the latest from Satan himself, Andrew Lloyd Webber. Fuck Andrew Lloyd Webber, with knobs on. Inside the marquee it was painted black, and it was quite a small venue, claustrophobic almost. Long dark corridor, and then the main hall itself, a small stage at the front, bar at the back behind the soundboard, and if you wanted to sit down, you sat on the floor or at the bar. I never sat at the bar, and the floor, you wouldn't really wanna, and this is metalheads we're talking about. I might be willing to cohort with demons and do unspeakable things with people that would make Granny's hair go white, but sitting on the marquee floor was an ick too far. So when the mosh pit was going in full swing, which it always was when we were there, staying vertical was of the utmost importance. Any number of things I loved about the marquee. All the bands I liked wanted to play there. It was a small space, and so there was no trouble seeing the performances, and you could stand right by the stage and do some headbanging if you wanted. I often did that. One time Candlemass were playing, and I punched Messiah Marklin in the face. He was headbanging while I was blindly fist-pumping. If you look closely in subsequent photographs of him, you can see the faint impression of my fist in the middle of his forehead. Toranaga did a gig at the Marquee. They were brilliant, them. When it came to their song Time to Burn, Mark Duffy, the vocalist, had the crowd going. He was like, "That feeling when the fucking tube is late once again. What a bastard! Burn! Bastard, burn! That annoying twat who insists it was a fiver and not a tenner you gave him. Fucking bastard! Burn! Bastard, burn!" Yeah, it was great. One time me and my mate came to a Sodom gig and fucking MTV was out there filming the queue. They didn't catch me on camera. I ducked to the toilet in McDonald's up the street. Apparently they were all a twitter over the supporting act Sepultura. First time playing the country apparently. I was like, "Bloody foreigners coming over here to play their music. I'm here to see Sodom. Oh wait, not only are they foreign, Sodom, but even worse, they're German." My mate got on MTV though. I have been on television, but it was weird and in the Netherlands. Sodom with Sepultura was a good gig though. They were all good gigs. No seats so you could dance. You could climb up on the stage and dive off of it. I did that a few times. Unwritten rule to stage diving: going feet first isn't diving. One twat wearing the standard Doc Martin work boots went feet first and the crowd parted like water before Moses, and he landed on the floor. Wrong. It was terrible because they paused the gig until they carried him off on the stretcher. I would have played on regardless because that's the heavy metal way. Why should a fallen soldier, even a twat one, be denied the pleasure of the concert until such time for them to retreat to the ambulance where they can start thinking about the decisions they made? Long gone now, of course. Not the person who didn't know how to stage dive, though they might be, they probably are, they're toast, but the Marquee. It closed a while after I left England for North Wales, so it didn't matter to me in the way you might think. The venues I frequented in North Wales closed down while I was using them, which kind of puts your nose out of joint. Drinking my beer and they turn out the lights. "That's all, Patrick. Venues closed forever now. The party's over." It wasn't like that when I heard the Marquee was gone. It was just like hearing that an old friend had passed, but because you ended on good terms and your times were wonderful, there's only a tinge of sorrow, like a spice that makes the memory so much the sweeter, and so you smile. I hope you've been sitting comfortably. Thanks for watching. Good night.